The long and winding career road. Today, you will hear from 3 industry leaders on choices made, opportunities missed, and insights learned along their career path. Today's session will be moderated by hospitality celebrities Glenn Houseman, host of the No Vacancy podcast, and Anthony Melchiori, host of Hotel Impossible.
And the No Vacancy podcast, don't forget that.
A No Vacancy podcast, yes. Joining Glenn and Anthony in this discussion are Scott Campbell, CHTP CTO with North American Concerts Live Nation, Shannon McCallum, Vice President of Hotel Operations for Resorts World in Las Vegas, and Lyle Worthington, CHTP, Principal of Worthington Consulting, LLC. A little information on Glenn. At the 2022 Global Hospitality Awards, he was named the #1 global social media influencer in hospitality. Plus, his show, No Vacancy Live, was named the #1 podcast in hospitality. Glenn also hosts No Vacancy News Today, a news and analysis program focused on hospitality headlines. Friday Night Audit, a comedy-focused show capturing the energy of the post-conference bar scene, the Hotel Design Podcast, and offers up F&B commentary on the weekly sports-focused show, BT Talks Everything. Anthony is a hospitality expert, television personality, and creator, co-executive producer, and host of the Travel Channel's show, Hotel Impossible. The series debuted in 2012 and ran for 8 seasons. He also hosted Extreme Hotels for its 2 seasons. Anthony's hospitality career began as a night auditor, wound its way to general manager, senior vice president, and ultimately founder of his own hotel management company, Argio Hospitality. I hope I said that right, Anthony. With that, I now hand this session over to Glenn and Anthony.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad that you could be joining us today. For those of you who don't know us, well, you're in store for a treat today. Anthony, so great to see you. How much fun is it mixing up our regular show with being with these great people here at HFTP?
It's so much fun, and it's so much fun that people still don't know I'm your co-host, but that's okay.
That's all right.
I like stepping in your footsteps, and also the logo behind you says with Glenn Houseman. So why would people think I'm?
I know. I don't know what to tell you.
Listen, one of the things I want people to know, is that you started your podcast before people knew what a podcast was, 10 years ago, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
When people didn't even know what a podcast was. And then somehow some bald guy named Joe Rogan came along and took all your money. But
I know. Seriously, I was in line for hundreds of millions of dollars, people. But fortunately I got Anthony. So
you took about leadership. You took a leadership role and really kind of for the entire industry, you've become the person. If somebody goes to a conference and doesn't see Glenn Houseman moderating a panel or doing a podcast, they're probably in a pandemic.
Yeah, I agree. We did four podcasts and a panel and a couple of other things while we were here. But Anthony, I love that you're talking about leadership. And I think that's really the focus of what we're going to be talking about today. Those journeys, those success stories, but also more importantly, I think on some level, some of the failures that we all have in our lives. One of the things I've noticed, Anthony, is that when you see a successful person, you feel as if they've always been that person. They didn't have those challenges that us as individuals might be facing. So to learn the actual stories behind some of these incredible hospitality minds, I think is going to be a whole lot of fun.
Absolutely. And, and not only those people that you see that you didn't realize they weren't successful and they worked their way up, a lot of them, but they may not be successful tomorrow, or maybe they're challenging through something right now and they still look successful, but they have big challenges. There was a big company that I did business with for a long time. And I found out yesterday they went bankrupt. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I didn't think you would know the name if I told you, but I couldn't believe it. So if I can, Glenn,
yes, sir.
I say ladies first and
you're right up my alley,
Shannon, to tell one of her favorite, something either you learned from watching someone do something really good or something you learn from watching someone do something really bad.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And, talking about leadership stories is a lot. It's so important. It's so important to share because, like you said, Anthony, some people think that the role that you're in today was really significant and it was indicative of how you've been your entire career. And that's not necessarily the case. My background is not just hotel operations. I also worked for 10 years in food and beverage. And at a prior property in my career, when I was more junior, I was a restaurant operations manager and I worked a 3-meal-a-day restaurant, which for those of you who have worked in food and beverage know it's a tough gig because you're there sometimes from the beginning of breakfast to the end of dinner, depending on what's going on with your staffing and the volumes of business that you have. And I do remember working for a director of food and beverage / chef at one point. And I remember him coming into the restaurant and it was always pointing out those negative things and never really having anything positive to say. And, I used to say to myself, if he could just say 1 or 2 positive things with all of the opportunities he was bringing up, it would be easier for me to be able to really accept that more balanced approach. And I really realized when I was going to grow in my career that it's really important to have a more balanced approach and to bring up those good things that people are doing in order to keep them encouraged instead of just nitpicking the things that aren't right or are not perfect. It is important for constructive feedback, but the balanced approach keeps your team motivated. And that was a significant learning, and I learned it from someone else's behavior. So it is possible to learn not just from your direct experience and how you're acting, but how others are acting.
I remember somebody once told me early in my career, I walked into the room and this young manager turned to me and said, "Do you ever catch anybody doing anything right?" And that changed everything for me.
That's a really interesting point there, Anthony. So Scott, since your face just popped on the screen, it's interesting. You're in hospitality, but you're working with Live Nation now, a little bit different. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey through leadership and how you got to the place you are today, being an icon in the HFTP community?
I've had a really bizarre career, right? When I was asked to do this, I thought I have to sit and think about this for a minute. So just so you know how bizarre my career is and how God has a sense of humor, is that in 1975, I became a radio disc jockey in Omaha, Nebraska. And I worked in the radio business for 16 years until my wife had our first baby. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to get a real job.
Yeah, like $3,000 a year just wasn't going to cut it out there.
Right.
Nebraska, right?
Exactly. So, and we were in Vegas, and so I was a computer nut at night, when I wasn't on the radio, and so I ran into a lady who hired me to be a computer trainer, and I did computer training for the Mirage Hotel when it opened. The secretaries and stuff, taught them like Word Perfect and Lotus 1, 2, 3.
And for those who don't know, we're talking 1989, I think, right?
Yep, probably just about in that era. And so at the end of a class, this lady stays behind. I'm a dumb guy. I'm just doing my job. And she says, "How come you don't work for us?" And I said, "Well, nobody ever asked, I guess." And it was Elaine Wynn, Steve Wynn's wife. And like 2 weeks later, I was in the corporate IT department at Mirage Resorts.
Wow.
As a newbie, but in those days, PCs were just coming into fashion, and I was a PC guy. So I sat and listened and learned everything I possibly could in that world. But so learning from someone else, when I entered the company, I was taken under the wing of Bobby Baldwin, who was the president of the Mirage. And he said, "I want to try an experiment on you." He says, "I'm going to make you work every job in this hotel before you go over to that IT department." So I checked people in. I worked the back office in the front. I worked in food and beverage. I sat in the pits with the pit bosses. I did almost every job in the hotel it took about 9 weeks. And then I went to the IT department. And so I had learned the business before I got into IT. So I kind of had a different perspective of how technology would work in a hotel. And when we would sit in IT meetings and they'd say, "Well, let's build this." And I'm saying, nobody's going to use that, right? So I think that, Bobby's tutorship, to me, just watching him work and understanding how this business works, then that was like my success story. Everything after that was gravy because I knew what the boss was thinking and how the boss acted. And so I just acted accordingly. And became the CIO of MGM Resorts and
Wow.
and Pinnacle Entertainment and the Wynn when it opened. And so just
Wow.
crazy career. And then I remember I came from the music business, and then I got enticed by Live Nation, who was building a venues organization. So right now, my small team manages 130 concert venues around the country, all the technology. And so it's kind of a fun part of it now, where it's not hard work. It's going to concerts and making sure that we can sell stuff.
Hey, Scott, when the Sphere opens, make sure you invite us to go along with you, would you?
Absolutely. I got some friends over at MSG. That's not my property, but I can't wait for the Sphere to open. That's gonna be crazy.
And also, Scott, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Did Mr. Baldwin teach you how to play poker?
No, in fact, it's so funny. When I would sit in executive meetings, we're building City Center in, and I was very frustrated because not everybody was playing together, right? All the teams weren't playing together, and Shannon just probably went through this in opening her hotel. But I would sit at the end of the room, and Bobby would ask a question, and then he'd look down the room and he goes, "Scott, what are you thinking?" And I kept saying, "Why does he keep calling on me?" He goes, and then he finally told me, he goes, "Don't you ever sit at a poker table in your entire life. Don't you ever sit at a poker table, because you have every tell in the world, and I can tell what you're thinking before you open your mouth."
It's interesting because a lot of people don't know Bobby Baldwin is World Series of Poker champion.
I think
And
1978-ish.
Yeah, exactly. And also, he's probably the reason poker is such a big deal in Vegas. As we know, poker doesn't really drive a lot of revenue. So I thank him, because every time I go to Vegas, I have a really good poker room to play in.
Exactly.
So Lyle, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, and then after that, we'll get into some of the nitty gritty stuff.
Well, this is kind of interesting because my trajectory is quite a bit different than Shannon's and Scott's, but a little bit similar to Scott in that I accidentally ended up in hospitality. And I usually start my leadership journey conversation at 16, but really, my first job in tech was when I was 13, working in the IT department of a law firm, indexing maps, and at an ISP next door, pulling network cables under the floor for cash under the table, of course, because apparently child labor concerns were not that big of a deal in Texas back then. But my ambition was to be a heart surgeon, and I was swimming. I had been swimming for six years, 4 hours a day, trying to get a scholarship to university. And at the age of 16, I got into a horrific motorcycle wreck, broke 29 bones, couldn't walk, was told I might never walk again, and suddenly my only ticket to college is gone. So it was one of those moments in life, and probably one of the best life lessons that you can ever learn, that everything can be ripped away from you in a second. And what are you going to do? What do you do next? Do you give up? Do you quit?
Right.
Do you curl up in a ball and cry? Or like I did, I had a small computer. Do you teach yourself how to program? Do you teach yourself how to architect software? Do you build some software that suddenly people want to buy? Then you have to hire some people. Then you end up selling your software, and suddenly you don't have to worry about college anymore, right?
Right.
And so really, it was, I kind of started, if you don't count all the 15-year-old Pizza Hut back of house jobs, I really started in software development and in building software companies. So fast forward a little bit. Some additional companies either founded or co-founded, some successful, some really, really not successful. And I ended up semi-retired out at a golf course, teaching myself golf, realized I hated golf. Somehow the owner of the golf course convinced me to join their aviation company, and suddenly I was in hospitality. And what an interesting ride that was. 8 years with them, working for, building airplanes, refurbishing airplanes, selling airplanes to Manny Pacquiao, working with Bose engineers, putting in custom sound packages in luxury jets, and also running a resort. And I think in that moment in my life, I really fell in love with the hospitality industry, because up until that point, I had always worked with pure tech people, which are great to a certain extent. If you like gaming, they're even better. But I like to have fun as well. And I show up at high tech thinking it's going to be like DEF CON or something. And suddenly everybody's drunk and doing Guinness shots, or chugging Guinness Irish car bombs. And I'm like, oh, these are really fun people. And I also kind of fell in love with the challenge of the industry. And I thought, well, this is maybe a place for me to make a difference. And if I'm going to do something new, then this should be fun. I meet people like Scott and Shannon, and just kind of fell in love with the industry. So now basically what I do is advise and mentor. I think over the course of my career, I found the thing that I love the most is helping other people be successful. I had a couple really good mentors early on in my life, and that's what I like the most now. So that's what I do, mostly for startups and industry CIOs, occasionally for startup hotel companies like the Student Hotel. I also mentor and speak at accelerators, Techstars, and more recently jumped into sports. And now I am also on the executive committee for the Dutch Lacrosse Association and
Wow.
coaching the national team here.
As a little note, the Student Hotel in Amsterdam is a really interesting, unique type of place. You could stay for a day, a week, a whole semester. You don't even have to be a student, but it also kind of brings in those WeWork sensibilities with a gym and all sorts of other things. Really creative, interesting concept. But Lyle, you're talking a lot about entrepreneurialism, right? But you need to teach people how to be a good leader. What is the first real leadership lesson that you learned once you were fully involved in the hospitality industry?
Well, fully involved in the hospitality, I actually learned it before that.
Yeah,
but it is applicable, and that is that there are some jobs that you cannot delegate. And as a leader, the most important job that you have is putting together a great team and making sure that they work well together, creating alignment and setting a culture. And if you don't do that yourself, they say the saying, shit always rolls downhill. The rest of the organization is doomed. And I actually learned that by partnering up with somebody who was the worst. And they say you learn a lot from really good mentors, but I think that you learn even more from really terrible ones. So all of you out there that have bad leaders right now that you can't get out from under for whatever reason, learn all of the things that you don't want to do and apply that to your life as well.
Funny, that's also how I learned how to be a speaker, by watching people not do things that I think you should be doing, but also in my career as well, because if it wasn't for the CEO of my old company that I worked for, I probably wouldn't have been motivated to start my own business. And that helped me find my real self. But Shannon, I was talking about corporate culture there. You joined Resorts World 6 months-ish, give or take a couple of days after it opened. How do you find yourself adopting their culture and then trying to share that culture with all the folks on your team?
That's a really funny story, because I feel like I'm in a deja vu moment, because when I joined Aria in 2010, it was about 6 months after opening. And again, that was a large luxury casino in Las Vegas. And I think Miss Scott Campbell, he had already probably departed the scene. Yep. And but it was pretty bumpy. I mean, it was like having a car with square wheels, and we were still just ironing out some of the technology. So when I joined Resorts World, it was almost like I had the tools to be able to address where we were at as a property. Resorts World is a large casino property, launched in the pandemic, which, in itself would be a unique challenge, but also is full of technology that is brand new, that has never been placed anywhere else, and working with other technology that has never worked with before. So, there's unique challenges with that. And then also in regards to additional partnerships and working with a large corporation, and we're partnered with Hilton, and Hilton has, as everybody knows, many hotels all over the world, and they have a certain way of doing things, which they haven't actually been involved in a casino environment before. So that was a huge learning experience too. But, I am fortunate that Las Vegas is a very small city. And when you talk about building a legacy and building your persona and your relationships, that is what is really critical when you're building culture, is being able to build relationships. And when I hear Lyle talking about setting the tone, that was really important coming in here, because I was joining a group of people that have been working so hard 7 days a week, just opening up a hotel. And for those of you who've opened hotels, it's like boot camp. It's like 17, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't see your family. You just don't do anything other than sleep, probably at the hotel that you're working at.
Right.
And, and just working. And the team was exhausted. So it was really, how do we stabilize this environment? People need to start taking days off. This hotel will be fine if you go home and take a couple of days off here and there. and address one item at a time. Let's just start making a list of the things that we need to address, the technology we need to stabilize. And, progressively, like I said before, it smooths out with the operations. You have less downtimes. The team is more trained, and really investing in that culture, and that really setting the tone and the direction and the vision. And without vision, it's very difficult for people to come to work every day, not really knowing where is this going to get us. We don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, and the why is what's really important. So I think my past history working with MGM and joining ARIA just after opening was very helpful to me to step into this role.
Anthony, I know you got something to say.
Well, as a person that went through boot camp and a person that's opened many hotels, I will tell you, opening a hotel is 10 times harder than boot camp, because in basic training, you get 3 meals and you go to sleep by 9 o'clock, and you only get yelled at while you're awake. In the hotel business, you get yelled at even when you're sleeping, and because people wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you don't eat 3 meals, and you don't have a day off. So, and you probably do more PT running up and down the stairs of trying to open a hotel than you do in boot camp. But Scott, if I can ask you a question, what's the one moment, people look for these grand moments of leadership, and I find that leadership is really, a sentence or a moment. I remember a colonel in the military who went on to be a general said to me, do a little bit more and you'll go a lot further. That sentence changed my life, because I did a little more, and I was getting promoted, and I was getting awards, and I was doing well. And, so what was the moment that kind of shifted your mindset?
It's when you have that moment, it just rings in your head every day, right? You remember it. Somebody asked you this question like you're asking me. I was a young guy, I was probably 19 years old, and I didn't understand why people were being promoted around me. And so I went to my boss and I said, hey, I don't understand. Well, how come other people are being promoted? I'm just as good as them. I might be better than them. Help me out. And he sat me down and got up, closed the door like this was a big secret, and he said to me, he says, look, it's really simple. From now on, if you can look around the room and figure out how to help everyone you meet get what they want, then one day you'll get what you want. And I took that to light, and I said, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so all I got to do. So I set out. I was like, okay, hey, you want me to empty that garbage can for you? You want me to, it was kind of futile at the beginning, but then I started to realize that I could help other people in their lives and in their goals of trying to get something done. If it seemed like they were stressed out, let me help you. Let me go in and take care of that for you. And I was going out of my way a lot, and I continue to do that today. I look at my staff. We have a culture here that I every time I have a meeting with them, I tell them, look, remember our culture, family first. If you take care of your family, let me help you take care of your family. Then we're going to have great employees, and we're going to have a great team that works together, both in the business and both taking care of families. When there's tragedy in a family or something, there's a whole team that gathers around it. It's helping everyone you meet try to get what they want. And something, I'm feeling really comfortable and happy right now because I've gotten more than I ever wanted that I could ever dream of.
That's all. Scott, I got a follow-up question for you. You said you went to your boss with that very important question about your life, but you don't necessarily, when you're younger in particular, you don't just stroll into the boss's office. How did you find it within yourself to make that move? Because that was pretty bold for somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience necessarily.
Well, I guess maybe it's my personality. I always feel like, if you don't say it, you can't internalize a bunch of stuff like that, right? If you're frustrated, there are people around you can help. And it's not necessarily gossiping at the water tank. It was like, I'm just going to go ask the boss, what am I doing wrong here? Right.
Yeah, but when you were younger, to follow up on Glenn's question, when you were younger, something in your family, whether it be sports or somebody pushing you to do that, because a lot of people, even me, who is this aggressive person, until I was out of the military and I've accomplished some of my goals, I was always very timid in asking questions. So what was it in your upbringing that helped you do that?
I come from the Midwest, grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and great family environment. And, my father always said, you know, you only have one thing in this world, and that's your integrity, right? Nobody can change that. They can change everything else. They can change your business card. They can change your life, but you have your own integrity. That's first thing. And the second thing was, if you don't know, ask.
Yep. And Anthony, it sounds a lot what Scott is talking about is that whole notion of servant leadership, putting out positive energy into the universe and having it come back to you, right?
Well, I really am a big believer in what Scott said is I will take care of everything you need, whatever you need, family, you wanted a raise, you did a good job, you wanted a certain uniform, whatever you wanted, you got it. We changed your schedule for you. Here you go. I'll get you an ice cream cone, a banana split, whatever you want. Here we go.
Within reason.
But now there's a standard.
Yeah.
And now it's my turn to ask, right? I'm asking you, yes, this is the standard of my competition. We don't play there. We play at another level. We all go to the edge. We're all holding hands. Everybody's behind us saying, what are these people doing? And if one of you fall, the other person grabs you, and nobody goes over the fall unless we all fall together. And so I'm a big believer in upfronting a lot of the insurance policy. Say, hey, this is your insurance policy. You're covered. But now I'm going to ask you to just elevate a little higher. You're going to work a little long hours. You're going to do things. I had a young lady that worked for me, director of sales, Laura Boyardi. I'll never forget her. And the day before she left, she worked with me 7 years. And she said, we had a drink together. And I was asking her, you know, on the exit interview, could I have been a better boss? And she goes, I'll be honest with you. I like you, but I will never work for you again. I can't work in this environment anymore. I just can't do it. And I will never, ever work for your kind of leadership again. I like you, but it's just too intense. Next morning, she comes in and she comes in my office, she closes the door and she starts crying, almost forgetting there was a conversation the night before. And she goes, you're the best boss I've ever had. I learned more from you than I've ever learned. And I reminded her of the conversation the night before. And she goes, well, I was just stressed out. She goes, but you did ask us and you challenged us and made us do things that were impossible. And I said, is there anything that we ever did that we didn't accomplish? She goes, no. Was there anything impossible that wasn't accomplished? She goes, no. She goes, that's not the point. I go, that's the whole point. That's the entire point. You felt comfortable. You felt taken care of. You like me. You and I are friends. You know, you care about me. I never did anything to disrespect you, but I drove the team and we drove the team harder than any team you've been on. But we were also rated #1 hotel in New York City for service that year by New York Times before, you know, TripAdvisor. So people want high standards. And every day when they come into work, they're not bored if you have high standards.
I think high standards and a compassionate kind of leadership, right? Because while we're all the team will work until I tell them, hey, look, you haven't had a day off in a year. You need to take a vacation.
Well, you're a nice guy. You waited 364 days to say that. You're a hell of a guy.
But, you know, you notice things and you're like, you need to take a vacation. And I have a couple of employees. They're like, I don't need a vacation. Come on. I'm like, no. You need to take some downtime, right? And then they go take the downtime. When they come back, they're like, hey, I really want to thank you. I really want to thank you for pressing me into that because I now know I was burning myself out.
You know, and you know, one of the things that I admire about Shannon is you can work at a high level in very intense environment and feel like you're walking in a park all the time, right? Shannon has this feeling about her. Every time you're around her, no matter what's going on, that there's this calmness about her, and people want to work for that. People want to work for people that know we're in a shit show right now, but there's a calmness about the leader that I believe we're going to get through it. I don't know how, but I know. So Shannon, where did you learn that style of leadership?
I think you have to set the tone. And of course, everybody's had those bosses that come in and they slam their office door and everyone's like, oh, what kind of a day is it going to be? And I always really told myself that that's not the kind of leader I want to be. I want people to work in an environment where they feel comfortable, that you're approachable, that if there's something going on, that they can come and ask for help and they won't be judged. And I've also learned that when you're in a crisis, it doesn't do anyone any good to get, to fall apart. So you have to manage through it. And I also think in our careers, and I've been in hospitality for over 35 years, each experience you have is like adding a tool to your tool belt. And the future experiences may not be exactly the same, but you can actually pull knowledge from what you've learned in the past to apply to future situations. So I also do think that it comes with overtime, that
Right.
you realize that no matter what comes your way in this business that's so crazy and every day is different, that you will be able to handle it if you keep your focus, you get your team on board. And like you said, Anthony, you have everybody marching in the same way, and people believe in what you're doing. And it might feel insurmountable, but when you finish those really challenging days, everybody looks back and they're like, wow, we did that. And there's a sense of accomplishment. So I think just with experience and just keeping focused, you can move through any situation, no matter if you don't recognize what it is, with the tools that you gather over time.
And I really think that's important, especially in the hospitality industry, because we've all had to take jobs that we know it's going to get us to the next level that we don't really want to do, right? At first, I didn't want to be a night auditor. I actually fell in love with it, but I loved my team, right? So if you're around an environment where you love the team more than you love the job, that will get you through until you find the job that really you're passionate about. We've all heard this before. Nobody fires a job, they fire a boss, right? And our industry is going through something, all industries, but I think specifically ours, our industry, and I'll just say it, is more, air quotes, cruel than most industries. Simply not that we're cruel people, but our hours and Christmas and Easter and Passover. And it's,
Thank you for throwing that into me.
You're welcome. I did. And
I'm like, I'll work Christmas.
like, I'll let you take off Palm Sunday, but you got to work Easter, Christmas, New Year's. And then, aren't I a great boss? And
Yep.
oh, by the way, somebody's going on vacation for 7 months. So can you work double time? So it's just the nature of our business because it's 24/7. I mean, you go to Vegas. I mean, it's insane what's happening at 4 o'clock in the morning in Vegas, right? And
You're having a good
actually,
time.
I actually found out that the best time in Vegas is 10 o'clock in the morning because nobody's up. But my point being is we're constantly grinding. And I think that we did a poor job in the beginning of not really recognizing that, yes, the lower pay in the entry level positions and the long hours, there's got to be something for people. So we all promised people a career and we gave them a job. And finally, I think now our industry's changing the mindset.
Right.
If you weren't as strong as, Scott or Lyle or Glenn or me or Shannon to really push your way to kind of what you wanted, you probably left the industry.
Yeah. And then not only that, but Anthony, on the opposite side, there are a lot of young people, and I don't necessarily mean by age, I mean in the industry, that are being fortunate enough to get promotions that might be on their skill level. So Lyle, let me pass this over to you. How could we as individuals look into ourselves to evaluate how we might be as leaders, and what are some of the steps we can take to acknowledge our deficiencies and then go ahead and learn those skills?
Well, it's like I actually prompted you to ask me this question because I actually wanted to jump on top of something that Shannon said.
I know, I've been very patient.
Because I think it's so important. And that is that as the leader, you set the tone for the entire organization. And when your organization is small, like in the case of a startup and you're the CEO, everybody's mood hinges on the mood that you bring in. And if you come in slamming doors and upset and yelling and screaming, then that affects the entire organization. But that being said, you cannot always be perfect all the time. And a big piece of advice that I give to people, especially as they come into leadership roles, is you need to understand yourself first. You need to understand what your triggers are, what pushes your buttons, what your deposits and withdrawals are, how much emotional bandwidth that you
Right.
have, and be able to deal with it. Because when everybody else is cracking and everything is crumbling around you, you're the one that has to keep it together. And if you're not in a place to do that and you don't know it, then everything explodes.
Lyle, how can we be honest with ourselves? Because I think sometimes we know, but we don't want to admit.
Yeah, that is the question, huh? That's what you ask yourself in every relationship as well.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, a big part of it is learning to love who you are, because you can change some things, you can't change others.
Right.
But if you love who you are, good, bad, and ugly, then you can accept who you are. And once you've accepted who you are, you can do something about it.
And I feel also, and this is for Shannon or Scott, that once you do show that leadership and you do show that calmness, when you do have those moments that you feeling a little shaken and your team sees you, your team rallies around you and your team
Mhm.
protects you. And your team says, you got to give them a break. You have to understand. But there is a lot of work you have to do. And I've been in those situations where they're like, you're going home. We got this. You need a break. And they don't do that until you've really shown yourself, like you were saying, that you got it together. So they want to help you. Matter of fact, those opportunities help them because they're like, oh, the boss doesn't have all the answers and he's human too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Anybody
Anthony,
want to
I'll
take that?
jump. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
No, go
No,
ahead,
no,
Shannon.
go, Shannon, you first.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think what you're saying, what Lyle's saying, and what Anthony's saying about being you, I think that's really important. And I think for a long time in my career, I was always trying to be perfect, or I was trying to show everybody how perfect I was. And it's hard for people to connect when they can't really get a true sense of who you are.
Right.
And I found once I just let my guard down and I was my true self, and I did approach situations, or I, made fun of myself and the team was laughing, they were able to connect with that, was when I truly was able to move ahead and build that team
Is there
atmosphere.
a moment that you remember that was the catalyst to that?
I think that I had a really good leader that I worked for. And for those of you that know Paul Berry, I know that Scott does. He was my mentor when I first came to Las Vegas. I'd never worked in a casino environment before. My background was with Fairmont Hotels and Resorts for 15 years in Canada and the United States. And I came to Las Vegas as that outsider. And Paul Berry, who had worked under Steve Wynn and under Bobby Baldwin, took me under his wing and taught me the casino business. And when I saw how he dealt with people and how real he was with people, he was a great example to me that I didn't need to be perfect. In order to connect with people, I needed to be real. And I appreciate the 8 years I worked with him. And I feel like he was a differentiator in my career and a fantastic mentor. And I would say to everybody on this call, no matter where you are in your career, if you don't have a mentor or what they call today now a sponsor, get one, because it's great to get feedback and to be able to understand how they are dealing with things in their career, because those examples help you to shape how you will move ahead. Not exactly.
Right.
We're not here to copy what other people do, but it gives you a good understanding about how other people handle challenges and what you can do in order to be able to connect with your team better, or to really frame your outlook moving ahead.
I like the idea of sponsor. You could be like, hey, I'm Glenn, and it's been 5 days since I've yelled at an employee. I like that. But, Scott, I want to hear from you, but let me just throw something in about myself there, about finding the authentic you. That is so critical to being able to live and work in a way that feels easier. For so many years in my career, I tried to act as if the way that I thought I was supposed to act in any certain situations. But at some point, I realized that that was untenable. If I couldn't be me and find my own path by being me, then there's bigger problems to be had. So I made a dedication to myself to be essentially me as a human being, as much me as I could be. And I remember, Anthony, when we first started doing our shows together, you didn't like get some of the quirkier sides of my personality. And you're like, you should wear a tie. You should do this. You should stop making those kind of corny jokes. But I can't, because it's authentically me.
No. First of all I said was have your collar stop flying out. That's all I said. I never told you to wear a tie, and I like your quirky personality. I was afraid because it was your show that I was going to overstep, and you were afraid because here I am, the TV star. You didn't want to upset me. And it took us about a month for us to fall in love.
And ever since then, it has been absolutely harmonious. But if you can be authentically you, you're going to do so much better in your career than if you're pretending to be someone else and wearing the burden of that all of the time. Scott, how did you find your authentic you?
Well, I came to this conclusion, I think about the time that I was being promoted into senior management, was I have this inherent flaw in my personality. It probably comes from my radio DJ days. I have this inherent flaw that I want to be liked.
Right.
And that's how I was leading, right? I was going around trying to figure out how to be liked. And I don't remember who the who the person was, but it wasn't a boss. It was a peer who said to me, why do you care? I mean, this is a job. This is a business. You're really good at what you do. Quit worrying about whether people like you or not, because you're never going to have everyone in the world like you. And I really took it to heart. And I sat around, I thought about it for a little while. And then I thought, okay, so I get in those situations and I catch myself, doing things just to be liked. I would stop and I would say, wait a minute. No, I'm a leader in this business and I have to act like a leader. I need to act like a leader, do the things a leader would do. I had to retrain myself a bit to get away from that, because it was really holding me back from the next promotion or the next job. And so I learned how to be a leader, and guess what happened? Everyone on my team liked me.
Right.
In spite of it all, right?
That's really funny.
It was a roundabout way
Right.
to get to point B, right?
Well, by relieving yourself of the burden and fear of not being liked, you wound up actually being liked.
It's interesting. When I started my career, when someone gave me something to do, whether I was a supervisor really young. One of my first jobs, I was a supervisor. So I was a manager basically my whole career. And before I was even I was never really a line employee, maybe 6 months. And I had a task, and everybody knew if they gave me that task, it's done. So nobody liked me, and I didn't care because I liked that I got the task done. So I turned up and I was like, nobody likes you. I was like, I don't care. But people are leaving because they don't like you. I was like, oh, now I care, right? Because I'm losing people I respect and I like. These people are great. Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, got it. All right. Know yourself.
Yeah,
Don't be an idiot.
it was the same for me. I so much did not care what anybody thought about me that it blew up in my face. And that was a lot. I was always the youngest guy in the room, right? I was the youngest guy in the boardroom, youngest guy, and the president of HFTP, whatever. And I always felt like I had to prove myself and prove how smart I was and that I was the smartest person in the room. And that works when you're working with a bunch of really smart techies. It really does not work with anyone else. And so I got kind of slapped in the face really hard with that when I got into hospitality, and suddenly everybody hated me.
Wow.
I had a senior, Glenn's heard the story. I had a senior Master Sergeant Young called me in his office. I was in the Air Force, and I was winning awards and getting promoted. And a lot of my bosses were frustrating me because I worked. I know they had a family. I didn't care. I just worked and outworked them. And he comes in. He was like, I think he was from Kentucky or something. He had the accent. He walks in. He puts his foot up on his desk, where he actually told me to come to his desk. He puts his foot up on his desk and he goes, Anthony, my boy, we got missiles on this base, right? I was like, yes, sir. He goes, you ain't the most important person on this base. What do? You file paperwork. You understand? I said, yes, sir, I understand. And I really did think I had the most important, because if I didn't file that paperwork or do the report that I was supposed to do, the whole world was going to end. Right. And we had people literally taking care of nuclear weapons and B-2 bombers. And, I just kind of shoved myself around, even though I didn't have the rank. And he taught me a lesson. It's like, get in line and be part of the team, because this is a team sport, especially in the military. It's a team sport. And so those were very valuable lessons.
All right. That's a really great point, Anthony, is creating that sense of community amongst your people, which is an essential asset for being a good leader. Shannon, let me ask you this question then. How are you trying to unite your team together behind the common cause of success, and in your case, at Resorts World?
I think it's really important to take the time to get to know your team and to understand not only the things that are going well for them, but where are their pain points. Because again, when you collaborate with people and you help to be able to drive solutions or support your team in the solution, it builds trust. And that's truly how you build a good team. And Anthony also brought up something that's really important. Be that dependable person that people can come to. And if there's something people need to partner on, you're there to help them and to get the job done. You're not, ghosting people when you're supposed to be working in a group and leaving everything to everyone else. That's not going to get you anywhere. You want to be known as the person that gets the job done and is easy to work with. I'm not saying a pushover, but how can I help you be successful? And again, that's about really giving giving yourself to help other people be successful. And Scott actually talked about that. How can you help everyone else that you're working with in order for them to be successful? Because it is true, often people think that everyone around them is getting promoted and they're being overlooked. And it's like, stop focusing on everybody else. Focus on what you're doing in order to be successful, and success will come.
Excellent. Scott,
And-
sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, if I can ask a question, Glenn, would you mind?
Yeah, go for it. Thank you for asking me permission.
It is his show. I have to ask permission. But we've all been in situations where we get frustrated, right? When I'm frustrated, everybody knows it. And nowadays you don't know because of what I say, it's the way I carry myself, right? So one of the things I've had to learn how to do, and I think this is probably the most valuable lesson for the people on the call, because we're not junior managers, right? We've all been, we've all accomplished things in our career. How do you get someone that's either on your level, meaning a title or, authority wise? And I'll just use a hotel because a hotel is all I know is, I'm a director of housekeeping, and the director of security or director of rooms or director of front office is not really being nice to my team and is not really doing what they're supposed to do. And you're not really above them, but you're on the same kind of, platform. How do you move that needle? What do you do? How do you get their attention? I always start with ladies first. So Shannon, can you answer that?
I would actually meet with them and ask them, how can our team help you be successful? And I think sometimes moving through situations is putting that olive branch out first and opening the conversation. And a lot of times that strife happens because of lack of communication and lack of understanding about what the issues are. So for me personally, I would reach out and just say, I want to help. What kind of challenges are you experiencing? What can my team do in order to help you be successful? And then conversely, offer out also suggestions of things that you've seen that may help them be more successful. So I do think a partnership and a sharing and an offer of support, I'm all about the win-win solution. I'm not in it just to make myself successful. I want everybody to be successful and move in the same direction. And that really helps to build bridges and relationships across divisions.
Now, in order to do that, Scott, I want to throw this over to you. All of us are inherently different people, different personality traits, different ways of responding to things. How do you make sure that you're creating a cohesive culture, but interacting with people in the way that they need to be interacted with on a personal basis?
I think it's a couple things. One is, you have to intentionally do that, right? Interact with folks one-on-one. But, think of my environment right now. I have 130 concert venues all over the country. Right? I have 34 staff members that manages all the technology in those venues. None of them live in the same city. They all work from home. And when I first came in about 5.5 years ago, I realized that the first thing that's broken is not everybody knows in which direction we're rowing the boat, right? So I went to, Lyle will appreciate this. I took a Scrum method and I said, okay, so every morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, we're going to meet for 15 minutes, all of us. And we're going to quickly go over everything that's happening today and this week, right? And my intention was to get everybody on the same page of all the projects that were going on and what shows are playing this week and what's important and what's not. But what really became of it is it became a family. It's like when you wake up in the morning and you go down for breakfast and your family's there, it's family. So we accidentally created a family in which everyone, and it's sometimes it's personal. Sometimes it's, hey, bring your favorite piece of music and let's play it over Zoom. I want to hear what your music tastes are. Cool. It's personal, and it's, hey, by the way, we're doing an upgrade and doing a ticket upgrade at Jones Beach in New York, or we're building a new pavilion in 5 Points in California, or keeping people up to date. So my whole team knows everything that's going on. There are no secrets. And their family. So if someone says, I have 5 venues that have a show this week and I can't get to all 5, then before I can even say a word, 4 other people raise their hand and go, hey, I got you. I'll go to San Francisco. You stay in LA. I'll go to San Diego. And now it becomes a cohesive team because they're all kind of a family, or the word you used earlier I love is community, right? Because I help with youth ministry in my church also.
Cool.
And to do that, you have to build a community of folks that are all in the same mindset and the
Right.
same thing.
So what you're saying is you meet people where they are and then bring them along for the journey with you, with that sense of openness.
Bring them along, but bring them along as a team, right? Because and I rarely have to say anything. It's all of a sudden it's everyone helping everyone.
You know,
right?
I call those meetings, I call it stand up, and I believe in them wholeheartedly. It's like getting on a plane without a navigation system. You got the pilot. That's great. We're all on the plane. Where are we going?
Yeah.
Right? You can't get on the plane without a navigation system or without a navigator. And that's what those meetings do. And they're so overlooked because they're so simple. Everybody wants to complicate everything.
Yep. And just do it quick, get it over with. Everyone then goes to back about their job. They know what the pains and pressures are all around them, and they'll act accordingly.
Yep. So believe it or not, we're really about out of time. So we got to go to some closing messages right now.
Hold on, real quick first. Meg, how are you? I got a shout out to Meg. She's from Omaha too. Yeah, you're right. Midwest is huge. Sorry.
No, that's all good. I love that sort of thing.
I just saw that in the chat there.
So
I spent 5 years in Missouri, so I'm from the Midwest too.
Yeah, I'm from Long Island. I just know the Jones Beach Theater. That's all I know. Let's do some final thoughts. I'd love to just hear you recap and give people something that they could do to improve themselves and their ability to be good leaders. Lyle, let's start with you, please, sir.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what you've heard already, and that is set the culture for your organization. Treat people the way they want to be treated. And I think when it comes to culture, you're setting the culture for the organization and how you want people to treat each other within the organization. But also important is the culture that somebody comes from. And that is the key piece that a lot of leaders miss. They think that they can direct and they think that they can treat people the way they want to be treated. And the reality is we're all motivated by different things. And moving over here to Europe and now working with the European culture has been really quite an interesting and valuable learning experience for me, because you don't ask people to stay more than 40 hours. You just don't, no matter what. But they will do it if they believe in what you're doing and they believe in what you're selling, and they think that you genuinely care about them as a person. You're creating a contract between the people who work for you and you, and it has to flow both ways. You have to give, and it's not just I'm giving you a paycheck. How am I helping you grow? How am I helping you achieve your goals in life? How am I helping you with a problem that you have in your personal life because I just noticed you're a bit off today? These types of things make all the difference in the world.
Yep. Shannon, how about you?
Gosh, Lyle said so much there. I would agree with everything he said, but I would also say get to know the people that you're working with, understand what they want, help them to be able to achieve what they want, and together you will be a successful team. And again, collaboration is what you need in order to be successful in this business. No one person can be successful on their own. You need to have a team of people working together with the same direction and understanding the direction that you're moving in. I would also say that reaching out to continue to learn. And so all of you that are with HFTP, kudos to you, because you don't hold all the cards, you don't have all the knowledge. So continuing your education through your career will help you not only to continue to learn, but then also be able to network, and that too will help you be successful.
Anthony, what about you? You've been a leader for a very long time.
Not that long. I'm a very young person.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I just
everything everyone said, and here in America, we always looked at European culture and like, oh, they don't work as hard as we do. Well, guess what? We now have the European culture because we're exactly the way they are right now. There's somebody I know that's leaving a pretty demanding job, and they're kind of working the 40 hours and they have their weekends off. And so we're kind of coming into that culture, and it's not a generational thing. It's a human thing, right? We have time for work, but we have to have time for ourselves and our families. And I think that's coming around, and us old guys are starting to realize that we wish we had that when we were coming up. I mean, I can tell you stories of people I worked for that 18 hours a day, 7 days a week wasn't enough for them, And so I think it's time that we all understand you can accomplish two things. You can be successful and also know your kids' names.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, before the Industrial Revolution, all of history of humankind, we didn't really work all that much. It was 15, 20 hours a week in hunter-gatherer culture. So we've been put into a whole different universe that we weren't naturally created to do. So we do have to try to find that work-life balance. And I think for leaders to understand that, that's a great way to give people an understanding that work isn't everything. It's just really an important aspect of making each and every one of ourselves better. Anthony, this has been a lot of fun today. What do you think?
Anytime I get to spend with you is fun, my friend.
I can't wait to be.
I did not come on to see Shannon. I came on to see you.
Yeah, I doubt that. But you know what? I'm going to let myself believe it anyway. I want to thank everyone for being here. What a great session. A little applause at home for Lyle, Shannon, and Scott over there. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you all. I hope to be at High Tech myself the end of June and get to see everybody in person. Shannon, I have a feeling I'll see you in Las Vegas before long because I can't stay away. Thanks, everybody, and have a great afternoon. I'll pass it back to the hosts.
Well, thank you, everyone. And especially for our Leadership and Excellence Series participants, we really appreciate this engaging and fun session today. Let's keep this going in our community, the Leadership and Excellence Series 2022 community. Please post ideas and your journey of leadership to engage with other people participating. Also, our first book club session is next month, Thursday, April 21st, 2022. It will be held at 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time to accommodate our fellow European, Michael Levy, who will be leading a discussion for the book club Blue Ocean Shift. Michael is a CHTP and partner and COO with Citizen M Hotels. This closes our event today, and we look forward to seeing you online.